Would you look at that? We have another individual who has critiques for All for One. Let's see if our critiques align. Thank you to our $5 patrons Redwolf4765, Midnight Gemlord, and Sean. And a thank you to our $3 members Recliner Plays and Redwolf4765. Another very big thank you to our $25 patron Alex Ice Rose. And another very big thank you to our $25 member Alex Ice Rose. Now, we're on this breakdown / discussion and analysis of AsarathaHS. I'm sorry, I do not know how to properly say their name yet. So, my apologies. But before I hop into the breakdown on the PARASITE of My Hero Academia, their video, please remember your own thoughts on All for One in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit that little notification bell to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a page down below, each one as low as $1 month. That exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, let's hop into the video. The live reaction to the video. But I have watched the video already, so it's not like a full live reaction, but like still, it's close enough. So let's hop right into it. What's up, guys? Pencil again. Here we are to do, I'm not sure what to call it, like a reaction, review, discussion. I watched the video. It was good, but I watched it a while ago, so I don't necessarily remember all the points that they made. I've been talking about for the longest time that I need to make an All for One video myself and how I feel about the character. I mean, you can kind of get a general idea of how I feel about the character already. But regardless of that, I do want to see what Asaratha has to say. I'm excited. You know, they make quality videos. The link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go watch the original video. Fun fact, if you're new here, I do pause a lot. I do talk a lot. It's just natural. My fault, OG. But you know what time it is. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Editing me. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Go.
An insidious aura, an overwhelming presence so strong that when you're in his vicinity, all you see is your own demise. The quelling of you and any of your allies who come to face him. A mastermind who has set up pieces on a chessboard 16 years in advance. That is, until the third act. This intimidating villain has now been reduced to a Saturday morning cartoon villain who lacks any sort of on-screen presence, now lacks any of the supposed intellect and foresight we are to expect from him, and ends up taking the spotlight from an actually good antagonist, all while bending and breaking the plot with each important scene he's in, making the narrative feel nonsensical. Why are so many people
Fantastic. W intro, bringing up the peaks of All for One, why All for One's a living, breathing, walking, talking L at this point. All that. W, solid 32 seconds. We love it. And before we get into this, I feel like I should state my general thoughts on All for One and why I don't like them. One, the Saturday morning cartoon stuff. Yes, that's true. That's actually a reason why I did like All for One before. The whole idea, he kind of fits into the whole of like, oh, back in the day, heroism and villainy was really simple and stuff like that. And thusly, you know, All for One essentially being a big bad cartoon villain that's just like, I want to be evil because evil is fun, and All Might being, I'm going to be the perfect hero because being the perfect hero is perfect. Like, I do like that, but I understand what he means by like the current cartoon villain stuff. Like, bro really is just boring. And obviously the big thing that I definitely agree on is that he took the spotlight away from Shigaraki. And that's the main thing. And another general issue I have with All for One at this current point is that everything needs to be about All for One now. There is no major plot point that cannot be traced back to All for One, and usually I don't mind that in certain degrees. Like Kenjaku from JJK. A lot of stuff can be traced back to Kenjaku. That's just how it is. But it's not everything. Like, there's still things that just happen that Kenjaku has no control over. In My Hero Academia, All for One has to be responsible for everything. He has to be responsible for the traitor plotline. He has to be responsible. Spoilers for My Hero Academia, by the way. I don't think I just spoiled anything about JJK, but still. And like, spoilers for My Hero Academia, obviously. He set up to chapter 356 in his video. I think we're on chapter 385, and the leaks at the time I'm recording this video for chapter 386 have already come out. So spoilers all the way up until that point. Maybe not 386, because there's nothing to really talk about 386 yet, because I haven't necessarily seen too much of the spoilers. But with it being the case, that's my biggest issue with All for One. Everything needs to be his fault. And he took the spotlight away from Shigaraki. Those are my two fattest issues with him. And also, he's stupid. Like he brought up, and he mentioned, he is so stupid. Like, All for One, in the most recent chapters of My Hero Academia, all of his screen time makes me want to reach through the narrative, grab him, and shake him by the head and be like, you dumb bubblegum idiot, just go do your one thing that you said you want to do. But no, he's an idiot. like a legit certified idiot. After being the fattest of masterminds, after being an Aizen's Aizen, he has turned into a massive idiot for the sake of the story, for the plot, and it's not good. Those are my main things, but let's see what Asaratha has to say. I know this exact clip, and this is also me reading the All For One chapters, but let's see.
Myself included, no longer fond of the once all-powerful All For One. All For One, or AFO for short, quickly fell from the ranks as a once legendary character to now being probably bottom 2, if not the worst character in the entire series for myself personally.
That's a good question. Who is my least favorite My Hero Academia character? I'm trying to genuinely think, like, notably in all my other series that I've like a lot, there's usually like one character who no matter what I can point to and be like, I despise you with every fiber of your being. I have one for Blue Lock, I have one for JJK, I have one for heck, Seven Deadly Sins and Four Knights. I have one, heck, even for like more niche series that I don't talk about as much, like Undead Unluck. But it's overall my least favorite. I mean, I guess there's no real, like, no, I really don't like Toga. I really don't like Toga. And I know this is going to get the Toga fans mad at me, but I really don't like Toga. Toga's bottom 1. Bottom 2, though, All For One may be able to slide there. Because, like, if I separate all the things I like about All For One, because there are things I like about him. I do like that he's a Saturday morning cartoon villain. The fact that he's just mean for mean's sake, I do kind of like that. It's oddly refreshing due to the fact that we've been shifting away from that. And like the way that he's petty, the way that he's spiteful, or he was petty and spiteful. Like him using All Might's quote of "you're next" when he like detonated a building that Midoriya and the heroes were in. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. Love that. But if I like think of just what he's been doing as of recent and the irreversible damage he's done to the narrative on a whole, yeah, he can definitely be bottom 2. But let's see.
To the third act of the story, one of MHA's strongest characteristics was not only its villains, but its fantastic character writing. MHA's character moments are when it's at its best, as evidenced by the more recent Endeavor chapters. Its characters...
The characters, I do like the characters of My Hero Academia. Hawks, Endeavor, Bakugo, All Might. Yeah, I've always, like, it's no secret. If you don't know me, fun fact, I'm not the biggest fan of Midoriya. I can respect Midoriya and his writing, not the biggest fan of him. But Shigaraki, like, there are great characters in My Hero Academia. But I will say, the best thing about My Hero Academia, outside of Endeavor, the Chad himself is on screen, outside of Endeavor himself, the biggest thing that I think is My Hero Academia's greatest strength is its world building. Except, but it did fumble that wish. Ooh, yeah, but the shoji stuff. So most of the time it's world building. But yeah, in terms of the peaks, whatever, like, the series simultaneously has some of the highest peaks in terms of character. Like, Endeavor is literally my favorite Dugen thing, period. But at the same time, it has lows. Unbearable lows. Painful lows. So, that's interesting, though. I can definitely respect, though, that, like, the main thing that My Hero Academia was known for was its character writing. Because it's not a story. Like, I've heard a lot of people, because for some reason, I've seen it a lot recently online. Like, there's constant debates between JJK and MHA. And, like, one of the biggest things that MHA people put up is, like, the story is fantastic. Is it? I mean, like, I'm not saying it's a bad story or anything. But, like, there's nothing exactly that stands out about the MHA story to me. And I guess you could kind of, no, but I really like the JJK story. Like, the story of suffering. I don't know. I find that more intriguing than the My Hero Academia story, which is the story of heroism. But, like, plot-wise, I never necessarily found MHA too crazy. But, like, the two standout things about it, art's art. Like, literally, look at this Endeavor art here. And its characters. So I can definitely see where he's coming from with that. That makes sense.
Are generally insanely consistent to a very pleasing degree, as we get moments like Deku's highlights in the war that were teased and built up from the very beginning of My Hero Academia. Character moments that all blend together to deliver as highlights.
War Deku. I mean, yeah. The self-sacrificial stuff and it being flipped in a negative way was built up from the very start of this. Yeah, that's true. I don't know where my brain is about to be like, no, I disagree. But then I sat back and I was like, wait a minute. I don't disagree. So never mind. Yeah. He's spin right now. W character right. Let's
like
see.
Bakugo taking a stabbing for Midoriya at the very peak of his own atonement arc, or Dabi doing his.
Does he have a video on the Bakugo stuff? I'm gonna search the show. I want to see this guy's opinion on the Bakugo stuff. I want to see a lot of people's opinion on the manga. No, but I want to see it. But this is a moment. I mean, I very, ironically enough, I can recall a lot of moments of like how I felt at certain points in My Hero Academia's publication, because I started reading My Hero Academia post season 1 coming out, in pre-tournament arc. So I think my main memories like kick in around the Overhaul arc. So I should remember how I feel about this, but I think it was just neutral, mainly because I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it at that point that Bakugo was actually gonna go. So like this just felt empty to me. But that's just me though. I don't know. Let's see.
Reveal at a climax of the entire Todoroki family subplot. MHA's villains are no exception to this rule, with characters like Shigaraki and Dabi who have this strong, consistent characterization that makes us extremely excited to see what...
This is an all for one video, so we'll not talk too long about Dabi. But Dabi sucks. I'm kidding. He doesn't suck. But he's not... I don't think he's good. I have a whole rewrite written for him. I'm probably going to record it later today or tomorrow. And it'll be a full rewrite. It'll have my complaints with the character in it too. And I do need to make just a separate Dabi video complaining about Dabi. Because, I don't know. Dabi, it feels like Dabi is such a sacrifice of what his potential could be, but it's not like main narrative Dabi is the worst. I think it's just like, compared to what I thought Hori was building to, main narrative Dabi is so much, like fan and Dabi is so good. Fan and Dabi is fire. Main narrative Dabi, he is consistent. He is consistent. I will give him that. If we're talking about consistency in character writing, yeah, main narrative Dabi is quite consistent overall in his characterization. I can't even disagree with that. Bro has been crazy and stayed crazy throughout his entire narrative up to this point. But I think, yeah, I have different feelings about Dabi. And I don't necessarily buy the hype behind the character all too much, but I do buy the hype behind Endeavor. So who knows what's wrong with me? But let's see.
They have to offer when they're on screen, and give us some of the strongest moments in recent My Hero Academia. And this is exactly what I despise about all for...
You know what the wild thing is? Well, he's talking about chapter 356. But I'd say, like... I mean, I guess Shigaraki's return is one, but I think at the time of 356, this didn't come out by that point either. But Shigaraki, until his, like, proper return and resurrection a few chapters back, he hadn't given us anything since the war, which was like nearly 100, which was only like 2 or 3 years ago. That's crazy to think about. Dabi, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of people really like the Dabi versus Shoto fight. I was down with it. Dabi's like getting up afterwards is what bothers me. But once again, this is not a Dabi video. This is an all for one video. I'm not even a minute in. Hold on, let me go.
He breaks MHA's mold of consistency. Characters that bleed deeply into the themes that they offer when they're on screen, and give us some of the strongest moments in recent My Hero Academia. And this is exactly what I despise about All for One. He breaks MHA's mold of consistency. Characters that bleed deeply into the themes of the series, that build up to these massive character moments due to their strong characterization or character moments. And of course, characters that don't bend the will of the plot to their own will. All for One sucks for all of these reasons. Let's start from the beginning. We were always under the impression throughout MHA that there was someone behind this.
Notably. No, the idiocy in recent chapters breaks his consistency. But that's the only thing. All for One has just been mean and evil and a mastermind for the entire series. It's just him. It's just that he's stupid. Actually, no. I remember a point he brings up later in this video. That is true. He was very stupid even before the recent battle with Endeavor. And the whole engaging the second war as he did. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, that consistency, that metric of consistency is broken with All for One relatively early on, like over 100 chapters ago at the point. Because it was broken like as early as the villain hunt arc, if I'm pretty sure. And the villain hunt is over 100 chapters at this point, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, he right.
Supporting Shigaraki from the shadows. He slowly built up over 3 seasons, and in the second season, we learn of All Might's almost career-ending fight with the man known as All for One, where he had assumed that he had killed him. Finally, in the climax of the first act, we get this amazing scene of the kids feeling nothing but fear in his presence, and seeing visions of their own deaths. He walks out of the shadows, blasts away every pro-hero in his vicinity with one shot, and just floats there, as this incredible song plays. All for One's intro into the story was one of the strongest in the entire series. He destroys the entire...
I would say that specifically for villain introductions. No, maybe even just overall introductions. Because like no one hit like All for One hit. Like, nobody did. Nobody did. Like, notably, I'd started reading the manga, I'm pretty sure, post All for One's introduction. Like, I don't think I was there on the week-by-week wait for All for One. Like I said, the main memories of me, like, waiting week by week, like, rushing every single day to, like, trying to figure out if leaks or a new chapter had dropped for MHA was the Overhaul arc. Those are the main times my brain kicks in and remembers that. But even just reading All for One, like, on the page, because I don't watch the anime, so on the page, yo, All for One's introduction hit so different. It was so ominous. Like, it had this, like the opposite of hope. Like, that despair-inducing presence, that's what All for One had on a page. That's how fantastic his introduction was. He probably has my favorite. Like, definitively, out of all the MHA characters, he probably has my favorite just straight-up debut. Because he appeared as a deity and proved it. And I love that. It was fantastic. It's why... You can even go back to some of my, like, earlier reviews when we first started getting the All for One stuff. After getting over the shock of him body jacking Shigaraki, I was like, I mean, All for One's kind of neat. So let's see.
Entire surrounding area instills dread into all of those in his vicinity, goes toe-to-toe with our power ceiling, and reveals a grand twist of Tomura Shigaraki being the grandson of Nana Shi.
Yo, okay, hold on. Let me take a sip real quick. W-sip, stay hydrated, folks. But one... this isn't even really the All for One. The power ceiling thing. It is crazy how All Might used to be the power ceiling. And now, like, Midoriya, Stars and Stripes, Shigaraki in, like, his 5 different variations. All for One in his, like, 5 different variations. Like, All Might, the old All Might is nothing now. It's crazy to think about that. But if you were to go, like, if you were to include variations of characters, the power ceiling that used to be All Might would not even be relevant anymore. Like, it is wild to think about how crazy the creep has gotten. The creep has gotten wild. But that has nothing to do with All for One.
He is then narrowly defeated by All Might, and keeping up with MHA's thematic emphasis on the next generation and passing the torch, he leaves it all to Tomura as he's carted off to prison. This was fantastic.
He was right. This was fantastic, and that's another fat issue I have with All for One. I know the All for One defenders are going to be like, well, what's more appropriate than the future defeating the past? That has to be the most appropriate thing, right? Like, there'd be no other way that it could be more appropriate than the future generation coming in and properly defeating the past. Why should the past defeat the past and the past stays away? No, it should be the future. No, it's about passing the torch. All for One literally passed the torch. In Kamino, he literally explained, hey, this quirk, I'm not going to take it because it wouldn't work for Shigaraki. This was literally All for One before it got retconned, because that is just a flat-out retcon. There's no reason he shouldn't have taken Vestiges' quirk unless it's a retcon. I'm sorry, I've never seen a proper explanation for that. So he literally was talking about passing the torch, but then Hori got cold feet and said, no, I can't let the torch be passed because I need to... This is leading into a whole different thing about saving Shigaraki. But we got time. This is my video. So here's the thing. If I had to take a guess on why All for One comes back out of nowhere after literally MVA, after setting up Shigaraki as his own villain and straight up hijacking, straight grabbing Shigaraki and all of his main villain status and hijacking the narrative away from him. If I had to take a guess to why, I think Hori got cold feet about Shigaraki being the final villain. I legitimately do. I think he wanted to make the idea of saving Shigaraki more feasible for Midoriya so he could keep the whole pure hero mindset. And thus, what would be better to do that other than making All for One the big bad? Because we can save Shigaraki as long as we defeat All for One. Oh, Shigaraki can't be a victim if he's just the main villain. You know what we can do? We can bring back the old main villain to have him take over. And then bada bing, bada boom, Midoriya gets to defeat the big bad that's the source of all the problems. And Shigaraki can be saved. Beautiful. Wonderful. Ignore all the mass slaughtering Shigaraki did. Just don't look that way. It just didn't happen. That's at least what I feel. Because it feels so out of left field. So random. And the reason I think that is because look at how Shigaraki got freed from All for One's control. And now All for One needs to go do something to body jack him again. It was so random. It's almost as if Horikoshi realized he made a mistake because I don't think there's a single person on the planet that actually likes Shigaraki losing the main villain role. I don't think there's a single person on the planet that actually liked the fact that Shigaraki straight disappeared from the manga for 3 years. I don't think anyone liked that. So Hori just realized, uh-oh, maybe my cold feet should be hot. Let me plug him back in as the final villain. At least that's what I feel, because it seems so nonsensical. Like, why would you do, what writing, what in your good logical mind, Hori, made you think that taking away the main villain after building them up to properly be the main villain, after MVA, after Overhaul, after USJ, after all that, after literally getting rid of All for One, all the way back in Kamino, what crosses your mind and makes you think that, oh yeah, this seems like a narratively consistent goal to fit within all the themes of passing the torch and the new generation overtaking the old generation, then giving back the torch to All for One? I don't know. Seems like somebody just got a little bit scared, got a little bit concerned about the way they were taking the narrative. That's just me though. I understand people disagree, but that's just me though. I feel like Hori got cold feet, wanted to save Shigaraki, then realized, oh wait, no one likes this. Fine, I'll let Shigaraki be the final villain. The only reason I think that may not entirely be true is because he's still giving All for One screen time. Like, for some reason, we're still dedicating entire chapters, entire heroes, whole chunks and sections of the narrative to All for One. Why? I'm not a... Sorry. I need to let him run.
He spends some time beyond this in prison being a troll and off All Might, but other than that, All for One was a fantastic character, extremely well utilized. Then unfortunately, the final act of MHA arises. All for One returns and he just kinda sucks. All for One is now just a caricature of the Mastermind villain trope. We get reveal after reveal of him being involved in something, and that's
he's bringing up the thing I don't like. Like, the final straw that really pushed me to being like, okay, All for One's in too deep and like way too many things. It is him being involved in Dabi's backstory. That was too far. I don't know why it had to be him. I don't know why. I swapped that out in my rewrite just a little bit. You'll find out who I swapped it out for once the rewrite's out. Patrons and members will get it early though. But regardless of that, that was when I was like, okay, Hori, now you're doing too much. Like, literally tying everything. Because the good thing about the B plot, the Todoroki family B plot of My Hero Academia, was the fact that it was a B plot. It pretty much had nothing to do with the A plot. It had nothing to do with All for One, nothing to do with All Might, nothing to do with One for All, nothing to do with the quirks or anything like that. It was just something that happened due to the functions of Hero Society. But no, All for One had to get his sticky little fingers all up in there for nothing. There was no value added to it. It just made the narrative less interesting by tracing it back to All for One. Because it literally does nothing. Dabi doesn't even stay there with All for One. So, like, so stupid. But he's right. He's spitting right now.
just like, yeah, okay, I get it. Your hand is in every single cookie jar in the universe. But for the sake of structure, let's break the rest of this video down into 3 segments. 1, Mastermind, or is he? 2, nothing character.
Bro, we haven't even started the video yet. And I'm like 20 minutes in. Mastermind, or is he? He's not, but he is. Well, let's see.
And 3, plot inconsistencies. For the first 2 acts of the story, we're all told about how All for One is a genius, and during those 2 acts, that's seemingly true. He runs a criminal organization in the shadows. He knows exactly how to manipulate people to do his bidding. He is so adept at covering his tracks that he is only known as a rumor on the internet. He knew exactly how to strike at All Might's heart and groomed a symbol of terror specifically to get back at him, and his amazing intellect foresaw that the best course of action was to take the fall in the Kamino arc. The problem with this Mastermind facade, much like the rest of his character, arises in Act 3. This character, who has supposedly been making great decisions for over 100 years, fumbles it all in rapid succession. The more we learn about AFO, the less I'm able to believe in his intellect, and in his dreadful presence. The consistency of his character wavers. The Vigilantes spin-off book reveals to us...
You're bringing up Vigilantes. Alright. My apologies, my hand is falling asleep. But regardless, he's bringing up W facts. The ideas and the sheer presence of All for One early on in the narrative, and even up to the point of his introduction, is perfect. It is perfect. He literally feels like he feels more conceptual than he does character. And notably, I'm not usually the biggest fan of that, but the way Hori does it within the first act and even a decent chunk of the second act of My Hero Academia really works for me. The way that he set up everything for Shigaraki, gave him access to the Nomus, gave him access to the Doctor, gave him access to the League of Villains and all the connections that he had. Beautiful. The way that he passes the torch on, yet still helps Shigaraki in certain ways. He sets up and leaves Makia just to wait for him. He gives him, once again, direct access to the Doctor that ended up giving Shigaraki access to the power of All for One itself. Literally, all of that feels so well planned and perfect, and it makes sense within the context of the narrative. He was wise enough. He's been sticking around for 100 years. He's been plotting and preparing for something like this, and he's more than petty enough to raise someone like Shigaraki, who was the grandson of All Might's master. It's perfect. Like, all of it is perfect. So when he starts fumbling later, and the specific fumbles I'm mentioning are the entire fumble with the current rewind thing going on. The fact that he stuck around for as long as he did when he was in his prime form, stupid. The fumble with starting the war as he did, like straight up starting the war as unprepared as he did and falling for the trick of Midoriya and Aoyama, crazy, absolutely stupid. Fumbling and missing Overhaul's quirk when it was right there in front of him. A fumble, considering that would have restored him to his prime with no cost at all. The fumble of him literally allowing Shigaraki to be anything other than a meat puppet. If he was just going to meat puppet Shigaraki, then he did not need Shigaraki to have memories. If he was just going to have Garaki build Shigaraki for him, Shigaraki should have straight wiped his brain. Because the doctor can just do magic. Dr. Garaki is just a magical man. So, like, there's so many mistakes he makes later on. But I don't even know about this one, because, once again, I haven't read Vigilantes. I straight up have not read Vigilantes. So I have no idea what the fumble is here, but I'm going to let him tell me. Hold on. Left hand, wake up! Wake up! Wake up now! You awake? You awake? He's awake. Alright, let's go.
He was quite intelligently going after Shota Aizawa's Quirk of Erasure, an incredibly powerful tool to have in his arsenal. But the plan fails and he instead ends up killing Shirakumo, or who we know now as Kurogiri. The problem comes with the fact that...
Another thing. Don't hide pivotal information about your major characters in a side manga that most of your fan base isn't going to read, and especially your anime fan base who are anime onlys will never even get to experience because that's never getting animated. I mean, maybe Bones will animate it after they finish MHA, but it'll be too late at that point. I still don't know why Hori did this. I don't know why he hides such important information about Aizawa and other characters in Vigilantes. Not a clue, but let's see.
Vigilantes was simply an afterthought for both Aizawa and AFO. AFO's plan to get Erasure failed, so why did he just stop? He has one failed attempt.
I didn't even think about it that way. That's true. He could have just done it again. Like, wow. He also fumbled with super regeneration. Sorry. Well, actually, no, he fumbled with like half the quirks he gave the Nomus. Like, you're telling me that that durability quirk that Nomu had, the one in the USJ had, wouldn't have been good for him? The hypergeneration quirk wouldn't have been good for him? The scan quirk wouldn't have been good for him? Especially since Garaki can suddenly clone quirks, I guess. Why not? But whatever, let's see.
Snaps his fingers and goes, "Oh gee willikers, I guess that's that. Let's move on and take Search instead in 6 years." For a character who states that when he sees a good quirk he can't help but take it, he gave up pretty quickly on the power that should have instantly nullified every single adversary he comes across. Imagine if he had Erasure in his rematch with All Might, or even in his desire to take New Order, a quirk he claims he has always coveted, but apparently Erasure wasn't on that list. This is, I believe, due to, like I said before, Vigilantes not really being in the outline, and Horikoshi might have had all these plans for the Aizawa backstory, but they weren't in the main story. But by putting ink to a page, it's now canonized and just makes All For One look kinda stupid. This isn't his only quirk-related blunder. No, in fact, there are 3 more that stand out quite significantly.
Okay.
The first one is, despite Chisaki being right in front of him...
Yes! Yes! He should have just whipped that, especially because, like, the only hypothetical excuse I've seen for this, I'm not sure, he's probably going to cover, like, the excuses people have made. The only hypothetical excuse I've seen for this is the fact that the quirk factor may have been stored in Chisaki's arms and they're gone. So maybe All For One was like, well, shoot, if the quirk factor's gone, I can't steal it. But I don't know. He should have at least palmed his head and tried. Like, literally, Overhaul was right there. If he had Overhaul, you realize the series would be over, right? If he took Overhaul and he just smacked his own face, restored his whole body to his prime, he could, like, with Overhaul, you could be fundamentally immortal. Because every time you just get too old, oop, reset. The whole plot would not need to happen if he just used those big old holy hands of his and just smacked Overhaul over the head and yanked his quirk. But let's see.
He did not take the Overhaul quirk. This is something that I will be getting back to much more substantially in the third part of this video, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on the back burner for now. The immediate next fumble is that he, for some reason, just doesn't have hyper regeneration. Him and the doctor handed this out to Nomu like it was crack, and he even gave it to Shigaraki, but I guess it didn't occur to the Demon Lord, who would have won his second match with All Might if he had it. Before I get the inevitable comments saying, it doesn't heal wounds from before it's obtained. Yes, I am aware. it doesn't mean it wouldn't be useful for him to have. Initially, I just suspended my disbelief, and thought that maybe he just didn't account for having to go out there and fight again until his Shigaraki meat suit was ready. But after having MHA spend months and months trying to tell me that this guy is a genius, it makes it impossible for me to continue believing that this dude didn't account for literally everything. A guy who was a backup plan for a backup plan, and wasn't even...
That middle one is my favorite moment of All For One. That middle one is right there, like, you're next. But it's your turn. That was a fantastic moment. But he's right. And, like, here's the thing. For some of the things that All For One has his sticky fingers in, him not having a quirk that literally allows him to regenerate is insane. Like, there's no way you can justify all the other big brain moves this ugly pickle-headed face did. There's just no way you can justify that if he didn't take super regenerate. It is such a basic quirk. And he's right. The biggest thing is almost every single Nomu ever has that quirk. The high end had it. The USJ Nomu had it. I think some of just the regular near high ends had it too. Like, so many other characters had hyper regeneration. Why not All For One? Why not? Like, for what reason? Maybe, like, you can't even argue pride, because bro's the furthest thing from prideful. He is more than willing to be a coward. He is more than willing to be a coward and hide away from a child for multiple months and literally detonate him from a range. So there's no argument other than plot-induced stupidity. And that's not good enough. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. The fact that he doesn't have hyper regeneration is crazy, considering there are literally 15 copies of it, 15 other characters running around with it. And let's see.
Concerned with the idea of Aoyama getting caught. Again, it all just kind of circles back to the I can't help but take it panel. Apparently, he can't help it since he stopped pursuing erasure and super regeneration, despite how useful they both would be, and one of those literally being in his quirk lab. The third...
That's the thing. He didn't even have to pursue hyper regeneration. All he needed to do was have it. Like, I don't know why you would give that away. Like, of all the abilities, like, notably, I understand maybe giving scan away. Sure, why not? He already has a bunch of sensory quirks. I hypothetically understand. Not really. Not really. You know, I was about to say I hypothetically understand giving away shock absorption, but why would you do that? Why would you do that when your main opponent's whole thing is punching you? Why would you not take the quirk that can negate the punching thing? And if not negated, because, you know, the Nomu got overloaded. But still, anything you could take that would drastically minimize the effectiveness of your opponent would be fantastic. All Might doesn't have lasers. All Might doesn't have projectiles. All Might doesn't have, like, heat waves or energy attacks. He punches people. All For One, your main clash that led to your downfall was punching. If you had shock absorption, you would have negated a majority of the issues you had in your rematch with All Might. So why did you not have that? If All For One had those two quirks, the series would end at Kamio, because All For One would win. Because All Might wouldn't be able to do anything to him. The United States of Smash would have tickled. Tickled, I say. And he would have healed it right off, if it did do any damage. And I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, well, he didn't take him because it would break the spot. Then don't introduce it like that. Like he's bringing up with the idea that All For One mentioned that, oh, I see a good quirk, you know, I just can't help it. I'm gonna take it. Colonel. Like, legitimately, don't introduce that, for one. And two, well, don't introduce quirk cloning in general. That's just stupid. But, like, just don't do that. You can't have such a clear win con for a character and then proceed to not give a reason. Or give a reason. I have no idea. I cannot fathom a single reason why he wouldn't have taken those two quirks when his main opponent just punches people. But he didn't. I can't think of an in-character reason. Hori obviously couldn't think of an in-character reason because he didn't give one. But I'm sorry, it's a lingering question of why he didn't do it. So yeah, I agree. Bro's just spitting so far. We are 6 minutes in, and he's doing nothing but spitting.
Incident that leaves me confused now is AFO's refusal to take Best Jeanist quirk during Kamino. He said
Yeah. Oh, I can't take this quirk because Tomura wouldn't like it. You're gonna meat puppet him. Meet him. Meat to meat. I'm sorry.
Wouldn't take it because it's not a quirk that suits Tomura. Yet, with future context, we know that this was a load of as he is actually using Shigaraki as a meat suit. Best Jeanist's quirk is, at worst, pretty good. And even if he didn't want to keep it for himself, he could pass it off to somebody else who would want it, or even use it to modify clothes for his capitalist agenda. After having this dude is really smart be shoved down my throat by Horikoshi for months, looking at all these massive fumbles in the span of a year in-universe makes it extremely hard to believe. These events do not make a good mastermind, but they do make a... When All For One wasn't really in the focus and he simply acted as this imposing presence that mirrors All Might's simple idea of heroism, he was a pretty strong character. You don't need to be insanely layered or deep to be...
Ooh, that looks heat. But yeah. Once again, I mentioned this earlier in the video, but conceptual. All For One felt far more conceptual than he did real. I think that works. I think the idea of All For One is more effective than his character ever could be. And unfortunately, I think Hori didn't realize that and shoved him down our throats, which is unfortunate. Let's see.
Good character, you just need to fulfill your purpose in the story. He was a very scary character who fulfilled the idea of a comic book villain perfectly. The problem arises, however, when he usurps actually interesting characters to become the primary antagonist of My Hero Academia. All For One, as mentioned previously, is a comic book villain, and All Might is a comic book hero. But Tomura Shigaraki is somebody who holds deep disdain for a society that is capable of producing somebody like himself. Somebody who, despite wanting to destroy everything, still cares deeply for his friends and everything that they love, and the people he surrounds himself with. He grows into his own from being a bratty man-child to being a competent leader who could utilize ideology to grow his cause, becoming the ultimate symbol of fear, and then he gets body-jacked. While the narrative obviously has its reasons for body-jacking Shigaraki, such as teasing him with liberation for the first time, only to then have his freedom stripped away from him once again, at the time of writing, it has been almost 2 real-life years since Shigaraki has been himself, or almost 1.
356? Yeah, it's been over 2 years. Been nearly 3. I mean, hold on. I'll unfinish this clip, and then I'll talk about the whole hypothetical justification for the teasing of liberation, but we'll get to that.
100 chapters. The deeply interesting, symbolic, and thematic...
Okay, so he did. So, the thing about that idea, because I've heard that too before, the idea of, oh, well, the reason he gets body jacked, only to be freed about 2 years later, is so that we can have him really cherish his freedom. He spent a majority of his life locked away, he got the taste of freedom, the taste of power, then he lost it. And then thusly, this would prove that he needs to fight back, and yada, yada, yada. That directly contradicts with the main idea of My Hero Academia, which is passing the torch. And it directly stalls out the narrative dynamic of Midoriya, because it's not like Midoriya, like the main, okay, so the main parallel of My Hero Academia is Midoriya and Shigaraki. These two wonderful boys right here, yeah, that's the main parallel. That is the main duo of My Hero Academia. Don't let Hori try to trick you and tell you it's Bakugo and Midoriya. It's not. That's not the main duo. It's Shigaraki and Midoriya. Their stories parallel each other perfectly. Like, legitimately, even though Shigaraki isn't properly introduced to USJ, their entire journeys run parallel. That's why, even though I don't like it, I can see the whole, well, Midoriya wants to save Shigaraki thing, because their journeys parallel each other so well. From meeting to USJ, to having their first real threats as, well, losing both of their mentors in Kamino, to stepping into their own and proving their own worth as heroes and villains within the Overhaul arc. Both getting their own solo arcs to develop on the way, whether it be MVA for Shigaraki or... what's the arc? The one where he figures out how to kick. That one. The one where he figures out how to kick for Midoriya. And then them meeting up in the war after experiencing all the development. Giving Shigaraki a sudden taste of freedom and ripping him back, so he's stalled in his character arc while Midoriya still progresses into Vigilante, doesn't make sense. That just, like, the idea of the taste of liberation for Shigaraki's character breaks away from the direct line that the two are traveling down and sort of stalls Shigaraki behind. That's why Shigaraki in recent chapters has just kind of felt empty, because his journey was stalled for 2 years by something that didn't need to happen. The two were growing together just fine. Literally, the biggest issue with All For One is that he doesn't add anything that the narrative couldn't have had before. You could have had Shigaraki go into hiding. You could have had Shigaraki beat Star and Stripe. You could have had Shigaraki need to get his body up. You could have had Shigaraki do all of that on his own. And we would get more on the character front of him reacting to certain characters perishing, reacting to certain characters capture, aka the perishing of Twice and the capture of Compress. You could have so many more reactions and interactions and developments of Shigaraki realizing his new position in the world. You could have had all that and more. But no, you gave us All For One. It was boring. I hate to say it, he's boring when he's on screen for too long. And he's been on screen for way too long. But let's see.
irrelevant character has been put on the back burner after he finally gets to be his own villain in favor of somebody who stands for and represents almost nothing at the very tail end of the series. This decision wouldn't be that big of a deal if All For One wasn't the big bad, or if it weren't in the final arc of the series, but instead, we're robbed of one of MHA's...
So this has essentially been debunked. This article, once again, this video is old. It's, well, not old, but like, well, we're on 385. He said spoilers up to 356, I do believe. So that's 30 chapters. MHA has been going on break a lot as of recent. So it's probably, this year video is, I believe, about a year old. So with that being the case, even still, we are in the final arc. He is right. The story is not continuing after this. We are not getting My Hero just that. We are getting, My Hero Academia will never become My Hero. We will not have a My Hero Academia Shippuden. That's not going to happen. So yeah, wasting all this time in the final arc of the narrative. Like, that's essentially what this is. Since we, well, who knows? I was low-key convinced that All For One would kind of just be the final villain and Shigaraki would just get saved. I was low-key convinced. But essentially, wasting our time for 2 whole years with All For One as the main antagonist in your final arc is crazy. Is crazy. Like, he's essentially pulling a Naruto. That's what Naruto kind of did. It built up Madara as the perfect final antagonist for the entire series, having everyone, including former antagonists, rally against him, and then it dropped Kaguya. I'll give MHA credit. All For One has more build-up than Kaguya. But that doesn't mean that wasting our time, all of this time with All For One is valid. I don't know. Like, I still don't even fully understand Hori's thought process. My whole idea that he got cold feet about, you know, ending Shigaraki as a final antagonist, that's just a theory. I have no real evidence for that other than what I think would make sense with the whole saving Shigaraki narrative. Other than that, like, we have no reason for this. This was literally just like, if we strip away the whole idea of like narrative, execution, build up, we strip away all that, we literally just got our time wasted for 2 years. Because Shigaraki's back now and he's fighting Midoriya. The main big battle is happening. As it always was supposed to. We just had 2 years of filler. Like, legitimately 2 years of filler. That's crazy. I don't know. At least to me. I don't know. Do other people not find that crazy? That's bonkers to me. But let's see.
Best characters for almost 100 chapters now. It also feels like that Horikoshi is aware that All For One cannot fill the shoes of the primary antagonist left by Shigaraki, so he tries to give him a new motivation right at the very end of the series, which leaves a...
This, ladies and gentlemen, is what I like to call the Kingdom Hearts effect. Or the Xehanort effect. Where Nomura realized, wait a minute. I gotta make bro at least a little bit more interesting and or sympathetic. I know he wants to be the savior of the world and not just study information. I'm going to complain a lot about Xehanort when I make that 2-hour video. The script is already 16 pages long. For reference, my previous longest scripted video was 10 pages long. I'm not done writing the Xehanort script yet, but let's see. I think he's going to talk about like the whole motivation of All For One wanting to like rule the world through production or something like that.
Significant amount to be desired. In chapter 343 of a series reaching its conclusion, the primary antagonist gets a motivation, and it's about becoming a capitalist, holding a monopoly on production-related quirks so that he can produce the resources the world needs, so the globe must turn to him for support. Not a bad goal by itself. It could actually be quite interesting if it wasn't shoehorned into the final fight after AFO takes the spotlight.
How many of y'all think we're ever going to get that Aoyama fight that was teased forever ago? Like, remember Aoyama and how he's teased to fight that one assassin dude? Do you ever think we're going to see that? I don't think so. I legit don't think so. I think we're kind of just stuck out of luck on that one. I don't know. I'm legit thinking about that. I'm like, I don't think it's going to happen anymore. I think we're kind of just stuck out of luck. I mean, I don't like Aoyama, so I actually don't necessarily care all too much, but still. Weird to think about. Let's see.
I personally preferred when All For One and All Might were both two mentors passing the torch to the next generation, as their simplistic, one-dimensional ideas of heroism and villainy would no longer suffice in a world so deeply nuanced. For both Toshinori and AFO to be supporting their successors from the sidelines, powerless to do anything. Midoriya, Class 1A, and the world aren't ready for All Might's retirement, just as Shigaraki and the League of Villains aren't ready for All For One to get carted off to prison. Midoriya is thrust into a world without All Might, and the PLE arc immediately shows this newfound independence as he is forced to develop his own fighting style, after copying...
Yeah, what I talk about, though admittedly that's way out of order from what I was talking about with the parallels between Shigaraki and Midori.
He's from All Might. The same can be said for Shigaraki in the Overhaul arc, as he's thrust into a world without AFO and forced to develop his own leadership style and underhanded tactics to get by as this world's next symbol of fear. This passing of the torch theme feels heavily undermined as AFO rears his ugly head once more to take control over Shigaraki.
Facts! He's spitting! Spitting everywhere. The whole place is covered in slobber. That's how much he's spitting right now. But yeah, big facts. It just completely undermines the main duology of My Hero Academia. The main duo. Don't get why Hori did it.
The dynamic between Midoriya and Shigaraki, one that hinges almost entirely on parallels, is severely damaged because of this. They share other similarities, of course, but it was all about being left out on their own in a crumbling world without their respective masters. Watching them both grow into their own hero and villain alongside each other after their guiding hands are removed is something incredibly satisfying to read or watch. And
I want you to think about this. Imagine, let's say Shigaraki, let's say perfect timeline happens. All for One fails to body jack Shigaraki. All for One kind of just gets left behind, out of the narrative, as he was originally seemed like he was planned to be. He just gets left out of the narrative. And imagine if instead of Midoriya rising up to fight Shigaraki, All Might possessed Midoriya and fought Shigaraki instead. Would that sound like a good idea? Like, do you think that even sounds right? Like, on any sort of level, All Might coming out of the clutch and be like, no, young Midoriya, this would be too traumatizing for you, even though you're extremely traumatized. I will fight him, and then takes over, or like he steals a one-for-all back. Let's say, to keep with the fact that All for One has his own separate body, he steals All for One-for-all back. I'm like, oh, now I share the full power of All for One, not just the One for All, not just the Embers. I will go fight Shigaraki. Like, does that sound good? And then imagine, after that being built up for 2 years, wasting 2 years to nearly 3 of our time, Midoriya suddenly steps up again and fights Shigaraki instead. Like it was supposed to happen. That's essentially what happened, except it's All for One and Shigaraki. That's literally what happened verbatim. It is insane that Hori like, I want to know. I legit want to know how, like, when Hori brought this up to his editors, or, like, whoever he talks to. Like, I don't know if bro just thinks by himself and is like, I'm going to pen this. Like, maybe he does. I know some creators do that. Heck, I do it. I do it all the time. But usually I'll tell people after I'm done writing. Like, I usually, any of my rewrites that I do, or even the what ifs that I do, I will slide them by somebody and be like, hey, does this make sense? Did I make any, like, plot mistakes or inconsistencies? And usually we'll still miss some. But I want to know how Hori, like, sat down and explained, yeah, so you know Shigaraki. Yes, Shigaraki. Yeah, the character I built up for what, 7 years? Not 7, or like 5 years at this point? Yeah, the character he built up for like 5 to 7 years at this point. Yeah, so you know how he's supposed to be the main villain because we literally built him up to be the character that's going to replace the main villain as the new main villain of this more complex world? Yes, Hori, I completely understand that. I'm going to bench him. You're going to bench him because he's like beat down and stuff like that? Partially, but no, I'm really going to bench him so I can bring back All for One. All for One? Yeah, All for One. The guy who's in prison. Oh, yeah, he's going to possess Shigaraki. How? Is he going to possess Shigaraki? Oh, yeah, Quirk, you know Quirk magic? Quirk magic. I thought they were like biological. No, Quirk magic. You know, the remnants of All for One's weird personality Quirk soul thing are going to take over Shigaraki's body now that he has All for One. Why? Because... like, I don't know how he can I don't know how he rationalized it, but it worked. We've been stuck with it for 2 years, 3 years now, so it worked.
Informs the duality of these characters. This is all undermined once again when All for One takes the spotlight. This spotlight being cast on him reveals just how repetitive and uninteresting his one-note nature is. A plan seems to fall through, All for One reveals either a contingency plan or that it was the plan all along, rinse and repeat for the third act. When you know that this dude has plans upon plans, the reveal that he has a plan is not interesting. It has in fact removed all presence this character had, not just for the reader, but for our characters too. In Act 1, the kids were too scared to even move around him, but in Act 3, everyone is quite easily mobilized to attack him. He doesn't provide that same image of death that he used to. All of this brings up the biggest worry I have about all.
The only hypothetical excuse I can give for the change in the kid's perspective is that the first war hardened them. Like, the first war made them develop a bit more. That's the only thing I could hypothetically excuse, but still, it's true. They're facing a literal demigod, and they are not scared, which is absolutely insane. And the fact that they're even relevant in a fight against them is absolutely bonkers to me, but regardless, let's see.
for One's character. And no, it's not Dad for One, despite how terrible that is. I don't think Horikoshi would stoop that low. His sudden inclusion into the primary antagonist role brings about the fear of the narrative, making defeating All for One the goal of fixing everything. If All for One is responsible for everything, we can just pin all of society's problems on him, and when he goes down, everything is better now. Don't mind the heteromorph discrimination, flawed court counseling, lack of social safety nets, and the murderous public facilities. Again, this is just a worry that I have. It doesn't mean that the story is going to outright do this, and it's very possible that this does not happen. But it's not like it would be new for a character who is known for. This is the section that is most frustrating to me. These are not only horrendous character-related decisions, but also ones that would completely bend the story and become immediately apparent as soon as Act 3 kicks off and he is reintroduced. As mentioned previously, why didn't he take Best Jeanist Quirk? Now that we know he was just trying to...
I've talked about this. I'm trying to not just pause and talk. I'm sorry.
Body Jack Shigaraki, it makes absolutely zero sense to not take such a powerful quirk from somebody. This again is not the only time AFO missed an extremely powerful quirk right before his eyes, however, as he was standing inches away from the leader of the Shiehei Saikai leader, Kai Chisaki, better known by his quirk name, Overhaul. Overhaul is probably in the top 10 most powerful quirks of the series. It was just wielded by a... You have the power to reinvent things.
Top 10 is kind of an understatement. If we remove like the hybrid quirks, because right, obviously All for One and One for All are going to be at the top because they literally are all quirks. If we remove the hybrid quirks, the potential that we saw with an unbuffed, unamped, basic quirk that was Overhaul, it's number 2, if not number 1. I'd say you could make a solid argument for it being the best quirk in the entire series. Even better, and I know that's crazy, solo quirk, at least not like, once again, excluding All for One and One for All, you could make a solid argument is the best solo quirk in the entire series. I know the New Order fans are going to be like, what about New Order? And I get that, but New Order wasn't going to make you immortal. New Order had like limits and stuff like that. Like New Order, it could work. And I'd say New Order is still number 1, but Overhaul's number 2. Better than Half Hot, Half Cold. Better than any of the engine quirks, better than acid, better than zero gravity, better than disintegration, better than what? Compress, better than blue flame, better than Endeavor's quirk, better than all those. Because you could literally do anything. Need to make yourself immortal? Just restructure your whole body so you're a younger state. Need to make yourself fit? You don't even have to eat properly anymore. Restructure yourself so you're in a prime physical form. Need to immediately one-shot your enemies. Deconstruct them with a single touch. Need to develop and interfuse your subordinates or yourself with other things. Tap them, tap your subordinates who are now fused together and still have access to their quirks. It might as well be a bootleg All for One or One for All. You need the ability to heal others, tap them. You need the ability to destroy others, tap them. You need the ability to build structures, tap them. You need the ability to reform structures, tap. Legitimately, you could do anything with a touch. It is like inarguably the most broken thing in the entire series outside the literal reality warping quirk, which was New Order, and the 2 Omni quirks, which are One for All and All for One. Better than Super Regen. It can do literally almost everything every other quirk can do, except for like super specialized ones. It can make acid. Just make it. I mean, it probably can't remove gravity from things, but you don't need to remove gravity from things if you can just atomize your opponents. Need to fly? Grow wings. Make wings. Need to mimic a quirk. You could probably mimic quirks with it too. Like the upper limits of Overhaul were never explored because of Overhaul. Kai Chisaki just wasn't creative enough. Give me Overhaul, slide Overhaul to me, and I'm suddenly the most powerful person on the planet. Indubitably. Indubitably. But he's right. Overhaul was kind of wielded by an idiot. Like the limit, like Kai doing what Kai did was very underwhelming with what the potential of that quirk could be. But let's see.
To organize matter however you wish. Overhaul is capable of fully fusing and restoring people to their near prime. AFO not taking Overhaul is not only a massive slap in the face to his supposed intelligence, it completely undermines his goals and pretty much everything that occurs after Villain Hunt, because none of it should be happening.
He's right. Because if All for One took Overhaul, everything's done. He gets 2 prime bodies. He gets legitimate immortality. He could probably get that bad boy duplicated. So both of his bodies have it. If he really wants to suppress Shigaraki, he gets Overhaul and he restructures Shigaraki's brain structure. So Shigaraki is nothing but his hatred. Like legitimately, he could get everything he wanted. The story would not be able to happen if he just straight Kai over the head. Let's see.
AFO wants to bodyjack Shigaraki because his body is failing and he wants the rage to take one for all. So why not either 1. Use Overhaul to restore your main body to its near prime, undoing most of the damage you've taken. 2. Use Overhaul to fuse yourself with Shigaraki so that you have the best of both worlds and achieve the goal you were trying to get with the surgery. 3. Use Overhaul to reorganize and produce entirely new materials, which fits exactly in line with your half-baked, randomly introduced goal of capitalist ownership. 4. Use Overhaul because it is absurdly powerful and is capable of one-shotting anybody you touch. And 5. Just don't take it despite it filling everything you desire to a T and making you look like a idiot and not even close to the mastermind the narrative wants to portray you as. There are usually 3 counter-arguments to AFO taking Overhaul, all of which are headcanons and have no actual standing in the story. Number 1 is that AFO didn't know who Chisaki was. This idea is more or less immediately undermined by a page turn or two, when All For One recognizes him and says not only his full name, but his title in the role of This genius mastermind clearly knew who he was, and I assume is Quirk. If he didn't know it was Quirk, well, if we take the movies as canon, which everybody on Earth, including Hori, wants to tell me that they are, then All For One had access to a scanner Quirk that literally tells the wielder people's quirks. Seems like something a mastermind should have when you have the quirk All For One. Number 2 is that AFO doesn't like complex quirks. This is something that has been said to me countless times when I call this into question. And here's the thing, this has never been stated.
And is Overhaul really that complex? This is a pencil. I want the pencil to be a phone. Boom. The pencil is now a phone. Like, how complicated is that? I mean, maybe making complicated structures, I guess. But I don't know. I don't think Overhaul's that complicated.
Never has AFO ever said that he doesn't want complicated quirks. He said that in the context of gathering quirks for Tomura's Shigaraki in the Kamino arc, which we also now know with future context is it's also just flat out wrong, seeing as how in the Vigilante spinoff he stole the Overclock quirk, and in the Stars and Stripes mini arc, he was going after New Order, which reads like a JJK power. A more complex issue is that Overhaul is never stated to be a complex power. It isn't ever stated to be simple either, it's just never elaborated on. The idea that Overhaul is hard to use is a complete headcanon. The implication that Overhaul needs to have a deep understanding of the molecular structure of something that he touches is absurd, and is never demonstrated in universe.
I've heard that too. I think a lot of people conflate Overhaul with Momo's creation ability. She's the one that needs to know the molecular structure of stuff. She's the one who actually has a difficult quirk to use. I can understand not wanting Momo's quirk because you would literally have to become like a master top tier scientist to create the most basic of things. But Overhaul was never stated to have that kind of limitation. So yeah, that's true.
As he can clearly use his power on just about anybody or anything, like random parts of the stone flooring in the Overhaul arc. The third counter-argument is that AFO cannot take new-gen quirks. This, much like the prior point, has no grounding in the actual story. It is clear that AFO is weak after his first encounter with All Might, and that might be impacting the limit of the amount of quirks he can hold, but it is never once stated that he cannot take new generation quirks. It's actually immediately disproven because he took Ragdoll's quirk, who isn't that much older than Chisaki, and
he took Ragdoll's, and he was going for New Order, which is a new gen quirk. I never even heard that argument before, but yeah, that's not a good one.
It's feasibly in the same generation as him. Let's just give it to them, however, and assume that it is true that AFO is limited to what quirks he can take. Even if this were the case, Shigaraki, the guy made to be a stronger, more modern version of All For One, who also has the original version of the quirk, is literally right there, and is bodyjacked by AFO. If we circle back to the first point of AFO not knowing who Chisaki is, Shigaraki does. He has personally fought him and his group. He knows what his quirk is capable of, has used its product, and could take Overhaul to use on AFO or to further AFO's goals. It is a fundamental flaw in not only AFO's goals, but his supposed intelligence. That's why when people tell me it's not a big deal, I can't help but disagree. It is a glaring issue with our primary antagonist. That's enough about Chisaki though. Let's get into how All For One turned the concept of quirk vestiges into absolute nonsense. Our previous understandings of vestiges were that they were the soul.
Yeah. Quirk magic. That's not even just an issue with All For One though. That's just an issue with quirks in general. Like well, to be fair, he does. When I really think about it. I mean, quirk cloning is what really like threw things off. The moment that concept was introduced. But that's also All For One's fault. Speaking of tying everything to All For One, that is also All For One's fault. So yeah, All For One really did send quirks down like the rabbit hole of just straight up magic. So yeah. But I guess they were always kind of magical. Like, they started off being something like somewhat scientific, but how the heck can you like biologically explain zero gravity? How the heck can you biologically explain even engine? Like, how do you do that? So yeah, I guess it makes sense. I guess quirks, but I guess they were like somewhat grounded. Now they're just magic.
Of other quirk factors that get transplanted. You could converse with them, and in a singular instance, they were capable of just moving Midoriya's fingers for him when he was brainwashed. The only people really...
And that was 8 people. 8? I think. That was like 8 people. And all they could muster was... Of course, it was like infused with One for All. But still, that's all they could muster. You're telling me one dude who doesn't have enough internal hatred to steal One for All managed to completely override Shigaraki? Really? Like, even within the context of this being established, let's say this is the build-up, the foreshadowing that's supposed to establish that, oh yes, quirk vestiges can override the will of the current holder of the quirk and fight back. Fight back! Like, legitimately fight back and take control. That's 8 people. 8 individuals. And all they could do was this. You're telling me All for One can fully take control of another human being while he himself admits that it's hard for him to just steal a quirk of one person because they have so many wills inside? Like, dog, what?
Of these interactions were people that could gather multiple quirks, like One for All for One, or the few people that were bestowed with multiple by AFO. That's pretty much where it ended. AFO's reintroduction, however, greatly expanded the capabilities of what a vestige can do, when for the first time, the vestiges of AFO's stolen quirks start fighting back. You might read that in the manga, stop and think, wait, they can do that? In the following chapter, we learn that due to the fact...
You're right. That is true. His authority as I think that's why I didn't question. I think it was that.
He's wielding a copied version of All for One. His hold on the other vestiges was weaker, letting them hold a rebellion inside of the vestige realm. Copied quirks are a factor of the story that we know almost nothing about despite being in the final stretch. It's essentially just quirk magic. This of course begs the question, why has this never happened before? Monsters who are quite literally hodgepodges of copied quirks like the Nomu have never experienced a quirk rebellion. Anybody...
That is true. Well, then again... No, see, the thing is, Kurogiri wasn't even a quirk rebellion. It was just, sorry, my foot's been cramping all day. But, please, stop, you're in pain. But with that being the case, like, Kurogiri didn't have a quirk rebellion, he had a body rebellion. Like, his corpse was like, whoa, wait a minute, I want to be a good person. Yeah, the Nomus aren't even, like, look at the USJ Nomu is the biggest example. It was literally a rabid animal. Like, at least Hood had some personality. Hood had some personality from the original body. And a lot of the other high-end Nomus we saw had some of the original personality. But you're telling me if having a copied quirk or a quirk from another being, they can rebel? Why didn't the USJ Nomu ever just wake up one day and be like, I have gains? Like, come on now, really?
Like 9, who has copies of quirks, has never experienced a quirk rebellion. All for One, in his second massive fight with All Might, where he had the copy of All for One, did not experience a quirk rebellion, despite that being the exact time he swapped out the quirks. Why now, in the final fight, do we experience this massive contrivance for the first time? The first theory is that New Order was responsible for this, but All for One himself states that this isn't true. The second theory is that...
That is true. That is true. I remember I even had a whole conversation in the comment section over this because I remember complaining about this. Someone was like, "Well, no, I was specifically talking about the Jiro stuff, and that awakening the course." I was like, "That is so stupid." And people were like, "Well, it wasn't actually her, but it was. It was a New Order," because people were trying to blame it on New Order, but no, the chapter clearly says it was a New Order. So
seeing all these extras rise up against the Demon Lord spurred them to action, which makes me think: was All Might really not good enough for them? If they rebelled then, they might have been able to kill All for One that time, or at least make the fight significantly easier. Why do vestiges even need to be spurred into action? What is the consequence for a spirit rebelling? He might bite you with his big, comically large mouth. In the worst case, he destroys you, which actually is a victory for you since, well, you're not a person, and also you weaken the Demon Lord by destroying a quirk that you've been stuck with for hundreds of years. Okay. It's all out of my system now. It's frustrating being told that I'm crazy for not liking AFO, or being called just a hater. This nutsack goes against his own characterization constantly in the third act, usurps better characters and offers nothing to the narrative, all while actively damaging it and introducing nonsensical factors, and making himself look like an idiot every single time he has panel time. All for One is the exact opposite of consistent, and that's exactly what I hate about him. This video was written and recorded just as we see All for One pull Rewind out of his, which has the potential to be even more stupid, but
and this is where I can come from the future and say that, yes, The rewind has been stupid. It has led to nothing but more inconsistencies for All For One and his character, and him being an absolute idiot for the sake of the plot. It is dumb, it has been bad, and it's stupid. And doesn't even necessarily make sense with how rewind works. It goes back to the whole issue of like rewind being way more powerful than it has been ever shown to be in its first use than it ever has been later. Yeah, whatever.
I'll bite my tongue until we see the rest. I hope I've been able to properly...
I shall allow him to unbite his tongue. It has been dumb. I actually want an update video. I want to know how he feels about the rewind stuff now. Let's see.
Demonstrate to you why I think All For One has had one of the biggest fall-offs of the series, and why I groan every time this dude is on screen. That's my All For One rant. It's been...
W! Y'all thought I didn't keep it on me, huh? Y'all thought I wasn't prepared. Y'all thought I wasn't prepared. Yeah. W video. Worthy video. Amazing video. Fantastic editing. Fantastic points. Fantastic section breakdown. Fantastic everything. W video. Overall, great. Like, there's really nothing I disagree with in this video. Like, usually I have at least something to disagree with. But yeah, I kind of just was backpacking off his points because he brings up fantastic points with everything. So yeah. It was just an overall super W video. Make sure you check out the original video in the comment section down below. Not in the comment. Well, I can put it in the comments, but it will be in the description down below. Go check out his channel. This was a fantastic video. It has a bunch of other fantastic content. Don't be shocked if I start reacting to a whole bunch of his content because it's just literally amazing. Like, I just think he's good. I'm so glad. Like, I don't know about y'all YouTubes, but my YouTube is consistently recommending me like smaller channels now. I think it's just because I've been like subscribing to everybody. So like, I've run across this dude. I'm glad I did because he has fantastic content, and I hope YouTube keeps recommending me more. If you have more other videos you want me to react to from other content creators, let me know. I'm more than happy to. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, because this is a chunk of a video, 17 minutes long, and we've been here for an hour. So if you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave all for idiots in the comment section down below, and please remember leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure the notification bell to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also I do a Patreon below, each one visible as one, count them one, now exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as little as 3 hours a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dabi the Pencil, writing off.